Hey everybody, welcome to Fantasy R&R. This is your host Ryan.
And I'm Rob.
And this is week 13 of Fantasy Football 2022.
This is Fantasy with Rob and Ryan. Fa la 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 Fantasy Football.
We're going to do a little bit of scatterbrain, fantasy unfocused. There's not going to be any real agenda here. We're not going to go through the games one at a time. What we do want to start with right now is one of my most hated subjects, the waiver ads. Every week there's something going on with waiver ads. Everybody says pick up this guy. You got Donovan Peoples-Jones. You got Josh Reynolds. You got Derek Carr-Hunt Jr., James Conner, O'Brien, and all these fucking guys that you have to look at every single week that really aren't going to give you long-term value on your fantasy team. Well, right now, we are looking at a situation where if you need to get into the playoffs or extend your way through the playoffs, there's a lot of waiver pickups you could do worse than adding right now. Rob, off the top of your head, what are some of the biggest names you're seeing that you would love to add right now if you needed to get into the playoffs or continue your streak?
Yeah, there's a few running backs, and by a few I mean three. There's this guy, I don't know if you've ever heard of him. His name's Zonovan Knight for the New York Jets, only because that backfield and quarterback position has been a complete mess going forward. You also have Benny Snell of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who he looked pretty good last week, but again, huge mess in the backfield. And then again, Kyren Williams of the Los Angeles Rams, huge mess, with Cam Akers just Cam Akering his way right out of the NFL. There's a few running backs off the top of my head I can think of that might be worth the ad for this week and potentially just this week alone. Ryan, is there anything off the top of your head you can think of that you are looking or clamoring to waiver?
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking right now as an owner of Josh Jacobs, and I told you guys to get on him early in the draft this year. He was falling really late in a lot of the mock drafts I did and a lot of the drafts I did. Right now, Zamir White and Amir Abdul are probably on your waiver wires. If Josh Jacobs intends to sit, he says he's hopeful he'll play, but we know what that means. Get ahead of the curve right now. If you got somebody you can throw in the IR, make some space for Zamir White or Amir Abdullah. Personally, I like Zamir White. The guy looks like he's really explosive. He had a huge vertical jump at the combine. And Amir Abdullah, he's been in the league for a little while now, and I'm not sure that he did anything more than get a garbage time dump-off TD reception in that last game. So I wouldn't look too much into his performance. I'd be looking more to Zamir White if Josh Jacobs sits. Also, on the waivers right now, Mike White, Sam Darnold, who didn't look spectacular, but looks like he could be a good fill-in if you're struggling at the QB position. Any of these guys like Jordan Love or anyone like that, are you interested in adding ahead of the playoff schedule?
Jordan Love I like simply for the fact that Green Bay just needs what looks to be a refreshing take on the quarterback position. And I mean that simply because even just last year, if you've listened to this podcast and you're one of the 37 and a half people that actually listen to this podcast, we were on top of Aaron Rodgers not being the quarterback. Yeah, that's right. I was hoping you'd get that. Aaron Rodgers was one of the guys we were saying, like, stay as far away from as possible. Now, Aaron Rodgers had a great season last year, but this year clearly looks like he's falling apart. Go take your drugs. Go step away. Go enjoy State Farm's great insurance. I don't care. Aaron Rodgers, go away. We're all tired of you. Nobody likes you anymore. And if Jordan Love is the answer, it looked to be that part last week. And I mean, we're talking about Jordan Love hitting guys that Aaron Rodgers should have been hitting the entire time.
Now, it's interesting you bring this up at all,
like
Rob,
an absolute stud at this point, right?
Let's get right into that for a second. I am incredibly interested to hear your perspective on some of the news that has come out. Before we get into this conversation I wanted to have about the change of guard at NFL and fantasy QB, let's talk about the state of the fantasy production of Green Bay. Is this over? I saw an article about Aaron Rodgers telling Deshaun Kaiser, God, what was it? I think I'm trying to remember the article now, but Deshaun Kaiser, he's like giving an interview and he's like, yeah, Aaron Rodgers used to come up to me and say, hey man, do you believe in 9/11? And Deshaun Kaiser's like, well, yeah, why wouldn't I? And Aaron Rodgers is like, you should look into it, bro. And I'm reading that article, I'm just like, holy fucking shit. We've gone off the rails. Like, Aaron Rodgers is not concentrating on football. I don't know if it was the ayahuasca, and his mind's not on football.
It's too big for his britches.
So it's amazing to me that Christian Watson's even producing what he is this year, and obviously a lot of the offense seems to be on Aaron Jones' back. Rodgers is not connecting with his wide receivers. I don't think it's for a lack of talent. You know I like Allen Lazard. You know I like Christian Watson, and you know I like Romeo Doubs. I know Doubs is out for a little bit. I even think Tanyan's competent. I don't think that Rodgers has a lack of weapons, and I don't think it's LaFleur's fault. I think that Rodgers is literally off his game. Is there any hope going forward for people who are rostering a majority of Green Bay Packers? Like, let's take, for instance, Joey in our ESPN league, who won a championship by getting Rodgers and Davante Adams onto his team at the same time. Is there any hope going forward for those Green Bay users?
Well, one, I'm very happy you even brought up Davante Adams. I would love to get Davante Adams' take on Aaron Rodgers before I got whoever's take we're even bothering caring about these days anyway. Let's talk about Davante Adams. One, Green Bay should have never have traded him, period. What are you doing? Makes no sense. Tyreek Hill with the Chiefs. What are you doing? Makes no sense. We're talking about 2 of the top 5 receivers in the NFL now were traded in the offseason, and it's simply because, from what I'm taking it was, excuse me, that's racist.
Running blacks.
Speculation. Forget these spick wide receivers. I'm just kidding. I'm talking about these specific wide receivers. What are you doing trading Davante Adams when, like, not even 2 or 3 weeks ago, I remember recalling, should Green Bay trade for a new wide receiver 1? And to further the point, should Kansas City look at trading for a wide receiver 1? What were you doing trading a wide receiver 1 in the first place when they're proven and they're in the NFL? They're wide receiver 1s. I mean, we're talking about 2 dudes that essentially, like, look at Tyreek Hill went to the Dolphins, and now everyone wants to talk about the Dolphins. They're 2 dudes, dude. Tyreek Hill made the Dolphins the Dolphins. Let's be honest here. It's not
true,
2.
though.
It's the fact that you got a top 5. I know it is. And Derek Carr has not been able to do what he should be able to do with Davante Adams, the way that Davante Adams is that guy at wide receiver. I mean, it's insane, it's crazy, but you know what? Kudos to you, Aaron Rodgers, for being a loudmouth, State Farm son of a bitch that I don't give 2 shits about anymore. I would never draft you. I think you're so annoying. I think that everything that you do is just all about you, hence why you don't give 2 shits about anybody else on that team besides your contract, which is the complete opposite of everything that you say about Ryan, with Tom Brady going, hey, I'll take a little less $1 million to make sure I can win a couple championships and look like a champion.
Rob, once you calm down a little bit, I want to talk about the change of guard at Fantasy QB. We have seen a ridiculous transformation. We were talking about this a little bit. Way back in the day, you're talking about, here's a guy, Chris Collinsworth, Michael Vick, you got Cam Newton, guys like that, and then all of a sudden starting into Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields. We have seen a shift in the way that we now view the fantasy quarterback, even though they may not be an NFL quarterback. And this is a great point to make. I look at Jalen Hurts and I look at Fields, and I kind of see like they're a little bit of a year apart. Hurts, we've been talking about on the podcast for years. He comes in, he improves his passing game this year, and now we just saw him run for like, 140 yards, 150 yards or something in a game, and he's starting to take that 150 passing yards approach to everything. Justin Fields is kind of throwing a little bit inconsistently right now. But if he takes that offseason leap like Jalen Hurts, we've seen that he has like a 48-point ceiling a couple of times a year. Would you rather have Jalen Hurts for 5 years or Justin Fields for 5 years? You know, Jalen Hurts seems to have a team where he spreads the ball around and he's more suited for his NFL success. Justin Fields is losing games with the Bears, but putting up a ton of points. So where do you go from here? Do you want that quarterback that's going to repeat success like Patrick Mahomes, go to the Super Bowl, spread the ball around, or are you looking at Justin Fields as an option that maybe he loses 70% of the games he plays, but he puts up 40 points?
It's a phenomenal question. I'm going to answer it as asinine as I possibly could. I want them both. I mean, we're looking at a point in time, if you go, rewind a little bit, even 10 years, we're talking about quarterbacks who tend to throw over 300 yards. And we're talking about 0 rushing yards, and if at maybe at most 10 to maybe 20. But what I am really enjoying right now in fantasy is the guys like who just so happen to be our starting quarterbacks, Hurts and Fields. They're a combined 300 yards. 150 yards passing, 150 yards rushing, and a few touchdowns here and there. I don't care how they come. When it comes to fantasy, we're talking about points. We're talking about ceilings. We talk about what you and I talk about on a daily basis, at least 20 points. Give me 20 points. We're done with the Kirks. We're done with the Tannehills. We're done with the Carrs. We're done with all these other guys, the Staffords, who clearly is just falling off of a cliff, who have to rely on 300 yards passing. Not anymore. This is the new change of the game. This is what we were talking about early this year. Again, if you're the X amount and a half amount of people that have been listening to us, we said go out and get Josh Allen because this dude is the pinnacle of it all. It doesn't even matter anymore. I'm sorry, I don't care who's ahead of him right now.
Yeah, it's only Mahomes.
I want Josh Allen.
Allen played out. He was a lock.
Exactly, and Mahomes was the guy we were all talking about beforehand. This is that guy, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. That to me is A. And B, these days, I'm looking at Hurts, I'm looking at Fields. I like Murray outside of the fact that he's a humongous bitch and a baby with
I'm just going to have
on.
to stop you right there. You're already right. I'm looking at the rankings right now. Patrick Mahomes 1, Josh Allen 2. Jalen Hurts is 3. Joe Burrow is 4, which you and me always herald him. Lamar Jackson 5.
I like Burrow. We like Burrow.
Justin Fields 6. Kyler Murray's 8.
And Fields didn't even play last week.
And Fields didn't even play last week.
Lamar.
It's a new guard.
It is. It's a brand new guard. I like Lamar Jackson, but the problem, and I'm being honest here, is I like Fields and I like Hurts more because they don't run recklessly. Let's jag off. Look at Baltimore now. You just lost to Jacksonville. Justin Tucker can't just continue hitting field goals. You're not going to win a game that way.
There's nothing wrong with what he did.
None
of that game is on Justin Tucker. You know, J.K. Dobbins is gone, and even when he was playing, he wasn't putting up a bunch of numbers. Gus Edwards, I'm looking.
He's supposed to be back this week.
Yeah, and I love him and everything, but like we're seeing, the whole backfield being switched up there with Kenyon Drake, and they don't have much of a running game, and then most of the time, Lamar Jackson's going to take the runs anyway. What's amazing to me is that we do lack on defense right now in Jacksonville. We have some studs and star players. We don't have a good secondary at all. I think that's obvious, and we need to work on some of those aspects of our game. But Trevor Lawrence, compared to Lamar Jackson, well, he absolutely slayed. He looked like he was 10 times better than Lamar Jackson. Right now on the season, 2,655 yards, 16 TDs, 6 interceptions. Yes, he does have a fumble problem with 6 fumbles, but Lawrence is starting to look like that franchise quarterback we always needed. I said this to you, once Etienne got pulled out of that game, they had to kind of strap themselves up in the boot heels, and you said it to me on the phone. You're like, it was a blessing in disguise that he was pulled out of that game. Because we had to learn how to play a different game, and we have to center everything around Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence did.
Yeah, well, you know what? Fantasy owners out there, if you are in a keeper league, pick up Trevor Lawrence right now if you can.
A dynasty league, you have to. You're crazy not to.
What, maybe 35 TDs a year, maybe like 5 years in a row? That's what I'm envisioning from this guy. That fade to Marvin Jones Jr. was out of this fucking world. 2-point conversion to Zay Jones. I thought the squib kick
NFL
was
ready, my
idiotic
friend.
To squib it to Lamar Jackson and Justin Tucker.
Yes, we all did. We all did.
What are you seeing next week when we go to Detroit and we go into some Section 8 housing to blow the roof up?
I mean, we do live in Duval, so we're used to Section 8. It's not a big deal. But I'll tell you right now, we're going to beat Detroit because the other shoe is dropping on Detroit. And I'm sorry, and I know that sounds cliche, but it's happening everywhere now. Like, we are 2/3 through the season, okay? And these little teams like Seattle and the Giants and all these guys that have had this amazing run, the other shoe's dropping. Jared Goff is Jared Goff. I guarantee you Goff, if his numbers are any better than, Kirk Cousins or Ryan Tannehill or all these other guys that we all hate, I guarantee you he's either right above or right below. And I think when it comes to a young and hungry defense that doesn't have 2 cares in the world of what happens, they'll blitz the crap out of them. and they're going to sack the crap out of him.
I absolutely think.
And yeah, they got Amon-Ra St. Brown, they got Williams, they got Swift. None of those players scare me anymore.
No, they're not using Swift. A lot of Detroit fans are absolutely
they're not
furious.
Should
that
be livid.
Swift
Should
is
be
not
livid.
being used. They
Yes.
think he's the most explosive player on the team. So obviously a disappointment of fantasy this year. I mean,
I think he's one of the most explosive running backs in football.
Yeah, I do. I actually agree, and I'm still going to roll him out at RB2, but I'm going to be a little bit more careful with my flex positions going forward if I roll DeAndre Swift out at RB2. One thing I will say, guys, from a DFS perspective, Jacksonville Jaguars are like at $2,700 right now. I'm not sure about Rob's feeling on this. We're going to close the podcast with this. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars defense is going to be the stream of the week.
Yes. Dude, on this podcast alone, and I came to you, I was like, hey man, this defense ain't that bad. To me, it was the offense that wasn't staying on the field long enough for the defense to just be refreshed. And it was killing me because I'm like, dude, like, Trayvon Walker looks great. The linebacker they got, Momoma, I'm going to totally blank on his name, I do apologize, from Wyoming, that started last week and played really well. And mind you, so I know this isn't going to be much of a fantasy take here, but Chad Muma, who was a linebacker that they drafted from Wyoming, where Josh Allen went, was a linebacker who, ironically enough, was originally a safety. He started last week against the Jags, and they've already come out and said, Muma's done so well, we plan on starting him going forward. The thing is, we are in dire need of secondary. We have one corner who's okay. We have one corner who continuously gets burned. Deshaun Jackson shouldn't burn you. That man's 105 years old. Chad Muma essentially could potentially move to the safety position with both Allen and our boy here from Georgia that we're talking about. I think the Jaguars are young and hungry. I'm not going to be shocked going forward. I mean, this is Let's Jag Off, so let's jag off. This is a segment about the Jaguars here. Nobody else is doing this. At Detroit, win. At Tennessee, they're falling like crazy. I'm going to go ahead and give a win there. Dallas, I'll take an L. At New York Jets, screw you. Win. At Houston, win. Tennessee, win. I believe there might be a loss somewhere in there, sure. But I do concur with everything that you're saying, Ryan. Trevor Lawrence is that guy. Trevor Lawrence is that guy at Clemson that I said it didn't even take me seriously. 2 weeks that I said, that's Peyton Manning 2.0 and is a true freshman. Man won 2 rings in 3 years. This guy is phenomenal. That's why the Jacksonville Jaguars took him number 1.
And this is why I'm saying, at this point, what I think is the Jacksonville Jaguars defense is going to be the stream of the week. I do think they're still going to end up 7-10, regardless of what anybody else thinks. I don't think it's going to be a ridiculous season, but I think they're going to be somewhat formidable. Trevor Lawrence has got what it takes right now. I'm going to go ahead right now on ESPN in our fantasy Dynasty League. I'm going to pick up the Jaguars and drop the Commanders at defense. We're going to do it this week against Detroit. I'm going to put them into my DFS lineups. We're going to do it. And guys, just like Kyler Murray, don't care about nobody but Kyler Murray. Just like Patrick Peterson said, Fantasy R&R, don't care about nobody but Fantasy R&R. This was Rob and Ryan. We'll see you next time.
That was Fantasy with Rob and Ryan.